It's been quite a week on the premier current affairs show on radio, Deep Dive on Capitalk 100.4 FM with Rumbi Zaivenge.
But the one thing that we cannot stop doing is conceptualizing, is thinking, is growing, and even sitting down and doing nothing is something. Somebody said that to me once.
The Deep Dive with Rumbi Zaivenge, Monday to Thursday, 6 to 9 p.m. The premier current affairs show on radio.
Now we get into our Capitalk Forum discussion. And as I did allude to, we are joined by Grace Matimba, Ashley Verenga, as well as Munyaradzi Maunge. And they are coming from the Medicines Control Authority of Zimbabwe in different designations there. So allow me to welcome you to the conversation. Grace, good evening and welcome.
Good evening, Rumbi. Thank you.
Wonderful to have you in the studio. Ashley, good evening and welcome to the conversation.
Good evening, Rumbi. Thank you.
Munya, good evening and welcome.
Good evening, Rumbi. Good evening, the viewers.
Yeah, wonderful to have you all on the program. So this evening, we're focusing on the regulation of herbal remedies and traditional medicine in Zimbabwe. We want to explore the laws, the standards, the safety measures around the use of these herbal products and the herbal practices. So to start us off, maybe we can just set the tone, Grace. What is the current position of the law when it comes to sale and use of herbal remedies in Zimbabwe?
Thank you, Rumbi. So maybe to start, I'll start by defining herbal medicines. So herbal medicines are those medicines that are derived from plants, so they can come in all forms. Currently we have mainly two bodies that regulate the use of these herbal medicines. So we have got the Traditional Medicines Practitioners Council, and we also have MCAZ, where we are coming from. So MCAZ regulates herbal medicines when they want to be sold widely, so in supermarkets and pharmacies. And then when a traditional practitioner or a herbalist is making their medicine for their own individual patient, and they are consulting them on a face-to-face basis, then this is then regulated by the other body that I just stated. So for regulations of medicine in Zimbabwe, we've got our law, which is MASCA, which is the Medicines and Allied Substance Control Act. This is the one that regulates medicines, including herbal medicines in Zimbabwe.
I want us to just really get into it. When we say herbal medicine, what are we talking about? I mean, before we went on air, I was just saying, so if I make myself a concoction, munyando say momo ginger, I put rosemary, I put cinnamon, I put lemon, does that qualify to be a herbal medicine because it's got herbal substances in it, or herbal? It's got mint, it's got a lot of these things in there. At what point does it become a medicine? Because there's a lot of this happening in our homes. People concocting things.
Yes, thank you, Rumbi. So this is still a medicine. However, so when, as I was saying before, where MCAZ comes in, is when this medicine is now wants to be widely distributed, and it's in a pharmaceutical dosage form. So it's coming as maybe as a tablet, as a capsule, as an oral syrup. So that's when then we draw the line between. But then when you're consuming your mudzi in water, it's still a herbal medicine. Yes.
Okay. Let's move on to another aspect. I think in terms of registration, Ashley, bring us into the picture here. How do herbalists and traditional practitioners register their products and services with MCAS? Okay, all right.
I'll be taking that.
Munya, come in. Yes, thank you.
So the mandate of MCAZ is to protect the public health by ensuring that medicines are safe, effective, and of good quality. So for us to then ensure that these medicines are safe, that they work and of good quality, a herbalist or a traditional practitioner should submit an application together with supporting documentation, attesting to the safety and effectiveness and quality of the complementary or herbal medicine. So the format and the required information is there on the website. There are stepwise steps on how to register medication, the herbal medicine. So it's very easy. The process takes at least 12 months. Also depending on the quality of the documentation being submitted and also the responses from the applicant, being the herbalist or the traditional practitioner.
And it's interesting you mentioned that okay, let me put this in a way that will be non-inflammatory. Okay, is there a requirement for a traditional healer or for a herbalist to register? How doctors are registered and they're qualified. Is the same applicable for herbalists and traditional practitioners?
Yes, thank you, Rumbi. So they are required to be registered, but then this is with TMPCZ. TMPC, the Traditional Medicines Practitioners Council. Yes.
So there's a traditional healer course that you then do auto on a degree.
For this one, we are not sure.
Okay.
Yeah,
I'd be interested to know that. I'd be interested.
Yes.
To our listeners, if I know we will need to take this one further. 0719100404. Kanapasina, I think we need to get into that standard as a prerequisite. But coming back to our issue today, let's talk about the standards that you expect to see as the Medicines Control Authority of Zimbabwe for herbal products, for them to be approved for sale. What are the standards that these products have to meet?
Thank you, Rumbi. So the medicines, including herbal medicines, should be effective. So they should treat what they say they are treating. They should be safe. So when you take them, you shouldn't experience side effects that are too much. So they should be safe, and they should also be of good quality. You wouldn't want to see maybe molds growing on your medicines. So those medicines, to ensure the safety, effectiveness, and good quality, we take them through an assessment procedure as the Medicines Control Authority of Zimbabwe. So we then do GMP inspections to then see if they are being manufactured at a facility which follows good manufacturing practices. And we also then do post-marketing surveillance to see how they are performing on the market and if the quality of the product on the market is as was stated and as we tested it before it was then distributed.
And how do you then acquire the information around the efficacy? Are you asking people who've used the medicine to come forward and do a survey? Are you speaking to the outlets who are dispensing them to say, has there been any adverse reactions? How are you compiling the information?
So before registration, we then look. Let's say we look at the claim that they are stating. So then after that, we then look at for herbal medicines. The good thing is most of these medicines have been there for a long time. So there's already literature that is there, that is peer reviewed, that is published, that supports their use in certain conditions. There's also then the dosages that are stated. There's then the safety profile is stated in literature. So before registration, this is what we look at. In some cases where this information is not available, there may be need for them to do some animal testing or some human testing, but then for most herbal medicines the information is already there in literature. After registration, I think Ashley can then chip in.
Ashley, after registration, what then happens?
Thank you, Rumbi. So once the products are available on the market, like she mentioned, there is post-market surveillance. So post-market surveillance includes random sampling of the products from the market from different points in the supply chain. So it can be from the manufacturer, the distributor, or from the retailer. So when the products are sampled, they are tested. MCAZ has a chemistry lab and a microbiome lab. So they are tested at the MCAZ lab to see if the same standards are still being upheld as the standards which were there when the products were registered. So apart from post-market surveillance, we also have routine inspections that are done for licensed and approved premises. So this includes your pharmacies, your distributors, your manufacturers as well. And then there is the unlicensed outlets, or those people who sell medicines on the street. So in terms of that, we work with CID drugs, narcotics, and they're part of the police. So we conduct random enforcement activities to make sure we confiscate the medicines so that we stop harm happening to the public. So these medicines are mainly confiscated because they are unregistered. So they haven't gone through the evaluation that Grace was explaining. So we cannot assure whether they are safe, they are of good quality, they are not adulterated. So confiscation and destruction is to prevent further harm to the public.
Are you sure they're being destroyed? Are they not being resold and then it was also Budira, another side of town?
Okay, so what happens is once cases have been concluded, the police will surrender the confiscated medicines to MCAZ. And we will do the destruction, and we also have some stakeholders who are free to witness the destruction so that people are confident that indeed the medicines were destroyed.
I think it's important because if you're saying there's so much harm that can come to people, I think we are going to get into some of the potential harm that can come to people who use unregistered medicine before we wind up. But coming to the issue of these random tests and so forth, are you finding that there's a lot of repeat offending, or are you always finding products to confiscate and destroy? And what does this say about the environment currently when it comes to these herbal medicines?
All right, so there's two parts to it. So the ones that have gone through registration, they're usually still of good quality. The ones that are a problem are the ones on the street and unlicensed outlets. So for those ones, we do not even test. Yes.
You just take and destroy.
Yes.
What if you test and then they could work?
So there is need for due process to be done. There are several things to consider apart from just testing and it passing and then giving it back to the people. Yes. So there's a long chain. Like she mentioned about good manufacturing practices, that's also something we need to consider when we're looking at the product. We need to visit the manufacturer and ascertain that the product they are making is of good quality.
Coming to the other stages, Munya, I want to come to you. You talked about the products being of good quality, efficacy, something that you mentioned quite a lot. Tichireva kuti kana zviri kunzichuna pamusoro unofana kupera kana wamwa mshonga wacho handiti. What are the tests, or what's the extent to which the herbal products are subjected? Do they go to clinical trials? What processes ensue before an approval?
So like what Ms. Wedding had said, MCSA has a chemistry lab and a microbiome lab. So some of these medication are taken to these labs to ascertain if they say that they've, let's say paracetamol in this, for example, the actual paracetamol is there in the product. And then also have to make sure that there are no microbes in the product. There are no molds, there are no bacteria. So that this patient who's taking this medication should get well instead of getting another disease again from this actual medication. Yes, so those are some of the tests that are done at MCAZ.
I don't know if you want to add anything on that, particularly that clinical trial aspect. At what point do you say, this one must be, you said that we were testing on animals and I cringed. I said, no, test on people, not on animals. I'm kidding.
Yes. So in response to testing on animals, so we've got, when you're conducting clinical trials, because then you're testing something that you do not know how it will cause, what effects it will cause to the human. So we first do testing on animal models and then move on to humans when we've ascertained to a certain extent that it's safe. However, coming back now to herbal medicines, so as I've alluded to earlier, some of these medicines already have a history of use, and it's well documented, and the effectiveness is well documented, and the safety profile is all documented. An example would be, for example, aspirin. Aspirin is actually came from a plant, so it was the willow tree. So then after some time, it was then a synthetic one was produced. But then we have a lot of these a lot of medicines that are derived from these plants. So also highlighting the importance of these herbal medicines. But yes, we rely on literature, and where there is no literature, there might then be need to then do the animal and human testing.
So aspirin is herbal medicine?
Now it's being manufactured synthetically, but it was first discovered from a plant.
Wonderful, wonderful. Okay, this is so interesting. 0719100404 is the number that you can use to get in touch with us as we talk about traditional medicine. What is the state of herbal medicine and its regulation in Zimbabwe? Tiri kuziva kuti iri kushandiswa, for all sorts of reasons, but we don't know whether it works or not. It needs to be registered, and MCAS is the body that does that munum Zimbabwe, and they're saying tinoda kuti tiongorore kuti mushonga wacho zvikazowandisa unoshanda here pamwe unotopedzisira wakurwara nezvimwe. So it's important to get your medicine checked, or to just check kuti iri kubva pai. Now I think safety is a big issue. I want us to come to underscoring some of the potential risks. Chi chingaitika kune vanhu vanoshandisa mishonga isingazivikanwi kuti inoita sei, unregistered herbal medicines. Ashley, you want to take that one?
All right, thank you, Rumbi. It's a lot of things, really. Harm can be mild, moderate, or severe. We're looking at maybe liver damage or damage to your kidneys, allergic reactions in all forms, vomiting, rash. It can come in all different forms. So that's why people are discouraged from using medicines that have not been approved, because you don't know the extent of the harm. In some cases, it can even lead to death. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. There was a very interesting story, I think, coming out of Masvingo in the past weeks, I think 2 or 3 weeks ago, that indicated that there were high numbers of men in Masvingo consuming guchu and some of these enhancing herbal medicines. And a lot of them were suffering from kidney issues, going for dialysis. What's your comment on that? And maybe just to address that for all the men kunyanya listening to this program.
All right, so we'll go back to what we've just spoken about, the importance of having the herbal medicines approved by the Medicines Control Authority of Zimbabwe. At least when you know you're buying them from an approved source, you know that they are safe, they are of good quality, and they will not cause any unnecessary harm to you. So we still continue encouraging the public to avoid buying any form of medicines, be it herbal or the allopathic, we call them allopathic medicines, the ones that are not herbal medicines, from the street. I know sometimes it's cheaper and you want to save a bit of money, but it can actually expose you to unnecessary harm. So in pharmacies, you will find their approved complementary medicines. Sometimes even in supermarkets, Bon Marché, TM or OK, they also have complementary medicines on their shelves. So we encourage them to use those outlets instead of the streets and other unlicensed outlets.
All right. Now, but I'm sure we thank you so much. You were so passionate. I was like, let me not interrupt. Let's talk about the safety measures. What does MCAS do to balance the need to protect from contamination or adulteration of these herbal products, and then maintaining the modern practice and the traditional practices as well? I know it's a tough ask to do as one organization, but how do you do that?
All right, so as Grace mentioned right at the beginning, the statutory instrument that we use for regulating complementary medicines, which is SI 97, of 2015, it exempts traditional medical practitioners because it says the regulations do not apply to any person who compounds, dispenses, or administers a complementary medicines to his or her patient in the practice of his or her profession at his or her premises. So if someone is to go and consult a traditional healer and they get an ointment or something to put in their tea or to use for bathing, they're allowed to do so by the law. What is not allowed is when the traditional healer now makes the ointment and they want to sell to the general public. Now that means that medicine needs to go through the evaluation process so that we can be sure that it's safe, it's not adulterated, and it's of good quality before it's used by the public. So I think that's a good balance.
Indeed, and I think a really important takeaway point there. Saka zvanzi kana muri kuita zvamuri kuita pamba penyu muchishandira vanhu pamba penyu, the law allows you to do that. Muchivapa mishonga, jecha, dota, whatever it could be. But kana makuisa dota iroro kana jecha makuda kutengesera munhu wese, that's when MCAS is concerned, if I get you right. Wonderful. We've got questions coming in from our listeners. The numbers are 0719 100 404. Pete, good evening. And you say, good evening, Rumbi. The requirements for registration are set up from the wrong concept. They want proof of concept or efficacy on the basis of a Western medical practice. For me, that's already a challenge because most of the remedies are either family developed over generations or are locally based, also having been developed and used over generations. As a result, you are here talking about harm, yet people vararama nayomidzi for generations. So this due process is starting kusiko, in my opinion. I believe we need to separate the so-called packaged herbal remedies and traditional remedies. Comments on that one? All eyes falling on Ashley, huh? To answer that one. I think this is, there's an important, there are important aspects coming out here.
Yes, thank you, Rumbi. So for this one, as we've stated earlier, we can also rely on information that is there on the use of the medicine. So it's not every time that we want a clinical trial. I think mostly for herbal medicines, as I've stated earlier, for most of them, we rely on information that is already there on the safety and the efficacy of the medicine. And also maybe to take you back to my example of aspirin, which was developed from which came from a plant. We all know that when you take too much aspirin, it can lead to death. It has side effects if you take too much. So the dose also needs to be regulated. Yeah, thank you.
Oh, you just reminded me of a famous comedian who says if you take too much aspirin, it'll be your last headache. But you are right about that dosage indeed. Now, there was a story that I was relating to just before we started this segment around the Mashingo issue, that doctor who was acquitted. So this listener is talking quite a lot about that in their question here. I don't know if that's something that you can comment on, but Segruba Buffet is coming in. And I suppose it attaches to that aspect of safety, isn't it, and negligence. I think that's where he's taking it from. You say you're of the opinion that the acquittal of the Mashingo surgeon, rather, on the culpable homicide case is not justified, since the victim's death pointed to gross negligence shown by post-mortem. And he suggests that the victims appeal to a higher court. I just want to take this a little bit further and say, what recourse is available for somebody who has perhaps consumed a medicine that has had an adverse effect, and perhaps it has caused death, perhaps bought from a registered or unregistered premises? What recourse do they have?
So at MCAZ, we've got a unit which does pharmacovigilance. So pharmacovigilance is monitoring the products that are on the market. So we have various ways that people can submit the adverse reactions or side effects that they experience when they take a medicine. So this is highly encouraged so that we also continuously update the safety profiles of these medicines. So in this case, they can then reach out to MCAZ to report their side effects for the medicine.
Educating the public is also a very important aspect around building awareness, around also ensuring that people beeline towards registered medicines, registered institutions. What initiatives does MCAS use or currently have to educate members of the public about safe use of herbal products?
Thank you, Rumbi. So we have public relations officer at MCAZ who's very active on social media. He's the one who also arranges for us to come on radio or on television. And when there's Zimbabwe Agricultural Show, they also have a stand there, and even at different exhibitions. So we have different platforms where we educate where we educate the public and discourage them from buying these herbal products from unapproved premises. We also have presence on social media, on LinkedIn, on Twitter, now X, on Facebook. Yes.
So if anyone has any questions, even after this program, MCAS all over social media, if you would like to ask, maybe what ndakatenga mshonga wakati uri safe here, is it that accessible? I mean, are these the sorts of questions that you entertain? Kune vabereki kana vatenga mshonga pamwe havasi kuziva vozongoti uyu uri right here ndisati ndashandisa. Is this what we're talking about?
Yes, we also have customer services officer with the WhatsApp number. I can give you the WhatsApp number. The public is free to ask any questions that they have that relate to MCAZ and its mandate. So the WhatsApp number is 0718 855 934. 0718 855 934. Or they can visit us at 106 Baines Avenue in Harare.
Wonderful stuff, Mazinzura. If you've got any issues around Mshongoro Makatenga or to understand a little bit more, I think it's better to do the legwork. Go to MCAS, bother them before you harm yourself. Now, as we bring the conversation to a close, I'd like you to just take a moment to speak to the Zimbabwean people about herbal medicine and how they can interact with this medicine and ensure that they're safe upon using it, during use and afterwards.
Thank you, Rumbi. I think it's always important, as Ashley has said, to buy your medicines from approved sources, so approved premises, and also for every medicine, you should also follow the directions for use, because every medicine, be it herbal, if you take too much of it, it can have side effects. If you take too little, it might not be effective. So always also follow the instructions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Grace. Amunya, anything to say in parting?
I think also the general public is also encouraged to report side effects or report adverse effects from these herbal medicines to the place of purchase, these registered places, which then forward these reports to MCAZ, or actually going straight to MCAZ and telling this, these issues, so that we can deal with these issues and also ensure that the public is safe.
Thanks so much. Ashley, in closing, your parting shot.
I would also like to encourage the public to report if there are any cases of people who are illegally selling herbal medicines that have not gone through the evaluation process with MCAZ, to report to MCAZ so that we can assist them in regularizing, so that their medicines can be approved and they can be available to the public after due diligence. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. I was speaking there to Grace Matimba, to Ashley Verenga, and to Munyaradzi Maunge, Chief Regulatory Officer for Registrations, Chief Regulatory Officer for Enforcement, and Senior Regulatory Officer, respectively, for the Medicines Control Authority of Zimbabwe, MCAS. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen, for being with us this evening as we were talking about a very important issue. And I do hope that mangamuchi zvibatawo azvisikunzi musashandise mishonga yenyuyo. Just make sure that they are registered, make sure that kwamuri kutenga kwacho kuri licensed, so that you can keep yourselves safe. I do know there's a lot of people who have taken to traditional medicine over allopathic medicine. So it's important that you then just check that it's safe, check that it's registered. And if you're not sure, please make use of MCAS as it fulfills its mandate in doing so. Okay, and then another message coming in. All right, I'll attend to that one in just a moment. So thanks so much to MCAS for coming in and for giving us that very important information on traditional medicines and how we are interacting with them.
It's been quite a week on the premier current affairs show on radio, Deep Dive on Capitalk 100.4 FM with Rumbi Zaivenge.
But the one thing that we cannot stop doing is conceptualizing, is thinking, is growing, and even sitting down and doing nothing is something. Somebody said that to me once.
The Deep Dive with Rumbi Zaivenge, Monday to Thursday, 6 to 9 p.m. The premier current affairs show on radio.